Frequent consumption of ultra-processed foods plays a significant and dangerous role in the rising prevalence of type 2 diabetes worldwide. These foods, which include packaged snacks, sugary beverages, instant noodles, processed meats, and ready-to-eat meals, are often rich in refined carbohydrates, added sugars, unhealthy fats, and artificial additives, ingredients that, when consumed regularly, disrupt normal metabolic function and damage the body's ability to regulate blood sugar. Numerous epidemiological studies and controlled trials have shown a strong correlation between high intake of ultra-processed foods and an increased risk of developing insulin resistance, a key precursor to type 2 diabetes. At the core of this issue is the metabolic chaos that ultra-processed foods introduce into the human body. Unlike whole foods, which contain complex carbohydrates and fibers that slow digestion and moderate blood sugar levels, ultra-processed products typically contain rapidly digestible sugars and starches that spike glucose levels shortly after consumption. This causes a surge of insulin, the hormone responsible for transporting glucose into cells. Over time, repeated exposure to these glucose-insulin spikes wears down the body's ability to respond properly, eventually leading to insulin resistance. When cells become resistant to insulin, glucose remains in the bloodstream longer, leading to chronically elevated blood sugar, a hallmark of type 2 diabetes. The damage is not only metabolic but also systemic. Chronic hyperglycemia, the condition of sustained high blood sugar, can result in long-term damage to blood vessels, nerves, kidneys, and the eyes. But even before full-blown diabetes sets in, people who consume large quantities of ultra-processed foods often exhibit early signs of metabolic syndrome, including abdominal obesity, high triglyceride levels, low HDL, good cholesterol, and elevated blood pressure. These symptoms are not isolated. They feed into and exacerbate one another, pushing the body toward a dangerous tipping point. Once that threshold is crossed, managing type 2 diabetes becomes a lifelong burden, requiring medication, strict dietary management, and constant monitoring to prevent devastating complications like stroke, kidney failure, blindness, and limb amputation. Another deeply concerning factor is the addictive nature of ultra-processed foods. Many are engineered to provide intense flavors and textures that stimulate reward pathways in the brain, encouraging overconsumption and promoting habitual eating patterns that are difficult to break. This behavior leads to more frequent spikes in blood sugar and insulin, accelerating the path toward metabolic dysfunction. Moreover, the low fiber and protein content in these foods further contributes to a lack of satiety, leading individuals to consume more calories, often unknowingly, than their bodies can metabolize efficiently. The problem is compounded by the fact that ultra-processed foods are often consumed in place of whole, nutrient-dense options. As people rely more on processed convenience foods, their intake of protective nutrients, such as magnesium, antioxidants, omega-3 fatty acids, and phytonutrients, drops significantly. These nutrients play crucial roles in supporting insulin sensitivity, reducing oxidative stress, and combating inflammation, all of which are essential for preventing type 2 diabetes. Without them, the body's natural defenses weaken, making it even more susceptible to the chronic inflammation and hormonal imbalances that pave the way for diabetes. Economic and social dynamics further complicate the situation. Ultra-processed foods are cheap, widely available, and aggressively marketed, particularly in low-income communities, where access to fresh produce and minimally processed options is limited. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. Populations that are already vulnerable due to poor healthcare access and socioeconomic disadvantage are disproportionately exposed to the very foods most likely to damage their metabolic health. In this context, the increasing prevalence of type 2 diabetes is not simply a matter of personal choice, but the predictable outcome of a food system that prioritizes profit over public well-being. Despite growing awareness of the connection between diet and chronic disease, ultra-processed foods remain a dominant force in global eating habits. Their convenience, taste, and addictive qualities make them difficult to avoid, even for people who know the risks. But the consequences are grave. Type 2 diabetes is not just a lifestyle disease, it is a progressive, debilitating condition that dramatically shortens lifespan and quality of life. Unlike some health risks, the impact of ultra-processed foods on diabetes risk is not subtle or speculative. It is immediate, measurable, and profoundly damaging. In sum, ultra-processed food consumption poses a major and preventable threat to metabolic health. The growing body of evidence makes it clear that frequent intake of these products accelerates the onset of insulin resistance and significantly raises the likelihood of developing type 2 diabetes. While individual dietary choices matter, the larger battle lies in transforming the food environment, improving labeling laws, regulating marketing, especially to children, and creating systems that make whole, nutritious foods more accessible than their ultra-processed counterparts. Without such changes, the burden of type 2 diabetes will continue to rise, fueled by a diet that silently undermines the body's ability to maintain even its most basic internal balance.